Welcome back, guys, to the Table Podcast. We're super excited to have you back. We actually have a guest today, and I'm going to let him introduce himself real quick, so you can go ahead.
What's up, guys? My name's Sam True, avid CrossFitter / CrossFit coach. Had to throw that in there. Youth pastor at the Mission Church, and most importantly, follower of Jesus. So.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, last episode, we actually hit on cancel culture and what that and how that affects us as Christians and also just as a country and a nation, a community. And so it was an awesome talk, a good talk, I think.
Yeah, really good.
But this week we're actually going to be talking on a little different topic. A topic that's really not talked about very much in churches, and really just a topic that I'm excited to talk about, to be honest, because I think it's very well needed.
Yeah.
And so the name of this episode actually is called Watch Your Mouth. So we're going to be talking about, as Christians, we are called to speak life over ourselves and others. And so there's power in what you say over yourself, right? There's power in what you say about other people. There's power in what you say when it comes to speaking over people, like when it comes to prayer or prophecy or anything like that, obviously. So I really want to expand on that topic of what that means and how that affects us as Christians. So I want to ask y'all a question really quick, and we can just kind of open up the floor, is how do you guys talk about yourselves on a real note?
Man, on a real note, actually, first of all, I just want to say I was really excited when you sent me the notes for this. Mm-hmm. Well, not the notes, but the topic. I was like, but it's funny because it was like a day before, and then my mind started flooding with things to talk about. Yeah. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
But on a real note, the way that I talk about myself, and I've gotten a lot of people I've gotten a lot of feedback on this, where people are like, oh, you shouldn't say that about yourself, yada yada yada. I'm a sinner. I don't identify as a sinner, but I know that I am a sinner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, but you're being sanctified, you're saved, you're purified, this and that. Yeah, I know. And I identify as a son of Jesus Christ. Yeah. But first and foremost, I remind myself, where did I come from? You know what I'm saying? And it's funny because people will tell me this and that and this, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, what about 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 15? This saying is trustworthy and worthy of all acceptance, that Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the foremost.
Yeah. Right?
Meaning, I'm the chief among these sinners. Look at me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I always, the way that I talk about myself is, I'm Javon, a son of God who was a sinner who's been saved by Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Come on.
Yeah,
dude. I think, especially just doing youth ministry, you hear so much stuff, especially what the generation talks about, as far as, who they think they are. This younger generation they do a really good job of talking negatively about themselves. For me, growing up, I was surrounded by people, thankfully, who great leaders, great people, great community.
Yeah.
I learned really quick how important it was to talk good about yourself, because if you don't talk good about yourself, a lot of times nobody else will.
Yeah.
So learning how to have positive self-talk, learning that everything you say can come true. So even the negative things can.
Yes.
Understanding that what you say has power, and just knowing that, hey, if you say it, it's probably going to happen. So if you say, hey, I'm a really good basketball player, you're probably going to become a really good basketball player.
Yeah.
If you say, hey, I'm really crappy at playing pickleball, and guess what? You will probably be a really crappy pickleball player.
Yeah. But I better start saying I'm a good basketball player then, because I suck at basketball.
Hey, just keep shooting threes, bro, and keep saying it. You'll get there.
Yeah. Hey, hey, look, just like you said, I think I'll be the next Michael Jordan.
Okay, not that far, Michael.
So, no, but I agree. I agree wholeheartedly, because I think that sometimes we don't realize the power that our words truly have. And I think we don't realize the power that our words have when it comes to when we walk into a room. You truly can change the entire atmosphere of a room by just what you say.
Absolutely.
In a moment. Like, you can either say something super positive walking into a group of people, or you can actually say something super negative. And it could literally change the entire aspect. I mean, you could walk in and say something about someone that's negative, and now everybody's in an uproar.
Yeah.
Or you could walk in and say something great or positive. And in James 3, it actually talks about that your tongue can set things on fire. It literally can set a relationship, a friendship, or anything on fire, because there's evil in your tongue. It's not just there's life in your tongue, but there's also death in your tongue.
Yep.
And so, but I would say for me, wholeheartedly, when it comes to me talking about myself, on a real note, I think sometimes I beat down on myself a lot. Especially, I think if you're a guy listening to this,
Yeah.
we destroy ourselves by ourselves when we are just in our rooms late at night, or we might be just sitting watching YouTube in our room, or playing a video game, or whatever. There's like this moment of you kind of sit by yourself and you just start thinking about all the things that you've messed up on, or all the relationships that you've screwed up on or messed up on, and the things you've said to people, or you've hurt people in a way. And so you like beat down on yourself. And so that's, for me, I think I let the enemy eat me alive when I'm by myself. I let the enemy isolate me, and then I also let it pummel me when I'm by myself. Yeah. And so, like, when I wanted to talk about this topic, it wasn't just for other people, it was for myself.
100%.
Because I saw myself going, where is it that I struggle with watching my mouth?
Yeah.
How do I evaluate and look at how I can be better, right, as not only a Christian, but a human being for myself? Because like you said, the more you say about yourself, the more it will manifest.
Yep.
And so, but we can ask the same question, because the things you say about yourself manifest into who you become every day.
Facts.
Right? So if we're speaking on that, how do you speak over others is the other question, right?
Yeah.
And on a real note, and not even just when you're with your friends, but just in an aspect of when you just are by yourself.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think that golden rule of, like, if you don't have anything nice to say about someone, don't say it at all. And it's kind of cliche, but it's true. I try to tell my nephew this. I have a 16-year-old nephew who I take care of. I adopted him 2 years ago. And his biggest thing is he's a critic of himself. And sometimes that's really good, but also it can be your worst enemy. It can be it can be the reason why you're so successful, but it can also be the reason of your failures, because you're constantly in this state of, am I doing good enough? And then of course the enemy will use that against you and be like, hey, yeah, you're really not good enough at this, as good as you think you are. When in reality, like, we all know that God has placed us where we need to be for a reason.
Yeah.
So when it comes to speaking life over others, I tell him every day, like, dude, watch what you say. And don't just watch what you say about yourself, but watch what you say about others, because it will come to life. It will. Darkness is always 100%. Yeah. And darkness will always be brought into light. And so for him, I just try to remind him, like, dude, say what you would want to say about yourself. Be positive. Whether the situation is bleak or not, or whether it is true about somebody, lift somebody up by telling them the opposite of what they think. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't know, man. I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't tell people, I don't tell people, like, I don't tell people to look at themselves the way that I, would introduce myself, like, Javon, the son of Jesus Christ, a former sinner, right? But I'm not necessarily the type of person to be like, talk positively about yourself, this and that, because I don't know, man. I just when I hear that kind of stuff, I think of, my mind starts to wander into the realm of manifestation, right? And like, your tongue has the power of life and death. So your tongue does have power to bring things into life. But I don't like to think to myself, man, if I say this, it's going to happen. There's too many people out in the world who are like, if you keep telling yourself that this is what's going to happen, it's going to happen. You can manifest it, right? Like, there's just too many messages and too many motivational speakers who are out there like, if you say you're gonna be rich, you're gonna be rich.
Yeah.
If you say you're gonna do this, you're gonna do
There's
that.
a line. There's a line.
There's a line,
Absolutely.
right? But I don't think that people should be out there bashing themselves like,
Yeah.
man,
Oh, yeah.
I suck. I can't do this. I can't do that. Actually, this reminds me of a book that I'm currently going through right now. I'm a second year at Lee College, and I know that you've probably read the book "Keep Your Love On."
Mm-hmm. That
It's
was a
actually
fire book,
crazy because now that we're entering into this, it's like the author talks about how powerless people will say things like, oh, I have to do this or I have to go do that, and blah, blah, blah. They'll kind of shift blame on the things that they have to take care of because
Make it an excuse.
make an excuse
Yes.
because they don't want to
Yeah.
do it and they don't take it. They don't take responsibility, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that you should look at life that way.
Yeah.
Don't look at life like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. Like, take responsibility for who you are and who you were called to be. God called you to do things with excellence. Go
Yeah.
do things with excellence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? You can speak that.
Yeah. Yeah, that book is really awesome. I loved that book. That was the one book that when I was going through Lead, that was the one that I enjoyed the most
Yeah.
for our small group.
Yeah.
We did small groups every year, and so like every single year we'd do like a different book or a different topic or a different type of thing, and that one was more of like a relationships kind of book. It wasn't just like romantic relationships; it was more just like relationships in general too,
Yeah.
and just how to love people the right way. And so I enjoyed that book.
It's
a
really
lot.
good. There's like a whole part where it talks about like victimized mentality,
Yeah,
where it's
that's
like, and then you can
big.
if
That's
you-
big in this
Yeah,
generation.
it's
Yeah.
huge, and it's what happens whenever you do talk negatively about yourself. Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, and you become a victim of yourself, right? But if you talk positively, then yes, you will not become a victim of yourself. But I think there's a line where it's like, okay, well, like what am I speaking over myself, and what is the reason why I'm speaking it over
Yeah.
myself?
What's
Like,
true and what's not.
Yeah.
like, am I really? If I say I'm going to be rich, am I really going to be rich? Probably not.
Yeah.
I think there's a fine line too, because I've always kind of thought the same thing. It's like, how much is positive self-talk worth? And what I've learned is that your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits, and your habits become like your destiny.
Yeah.
Like
That's
we
really
are creatures of habits, and
That's
like
really
God created us that way, you know? So whatever runs through your mind constantly, no matter if it's good or bad, will become your words. Whatever your words are, they will start to become actions, whether we want to believe it or not.
Yeah.
Your actions will become your habits, and your habits will become who you become.
That's
Yeah.
really good.
You know?
That
Yeah.
reminds me of I can't remember where it is in the Bible, but it talks about how the unrighteous are like dogs who run back to their vomit.
Oh yeah.
I
like-
love
that's
that
crazy.
verse
That's a
because
good verse. Yeah.
when I was in high school, I repeated it in my head every
Yeah.
time I was thinking about a girl. I was like, okay, stop. You're running back to the same situation, bro. Like this is the
cut it
computer.
out.
The computer is not the answer, buddy.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's like, man, what you said there is like, if I continue to say certain things about myself, I'm this type of person, I'm that type of person, this and that. I'm gonna keep running back to my vomit.
100%.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think also when it comes to that type of thing, there's a fine line with that because ultimately your words, if you're speaking positive over yourself, yes, the word of God is just, right? And it says that we're more than conquerors. We're a royal priesthood. We're, made in the image of God. All of these things. You can say these things over yourself and hide that word in your heart so that you might not sin against God, right? And that you can live wholeheartedly for the Lord. But there's a fine line between speaking that over yourself and pride.
yeah,
Yeah.
Because pride is what can lead you down the road of creating a habit of speaking too much over yourself,
Yeah.
right? So not just watching your mouth, but watching how you think of yourself
Yeah.
on a level of pridefulness, because obviously we're called to live a humble and a life of humility, right? And so I think that was a good point that y'all made with the fact that the unrighteous or the righteous people, if we're, doing all these things or have this girl or whatever it is, and you keep going back to the situation over and over and over again, you're only going back to your vomit.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I think that's a huge point.
Yeah.
But I want to dig in the word a little bit. We're going to read James 3, 2, or not 2, 10, or actually we could read, let's read the whole thing. So James 3, 2 through 12 says this: "Indeed, we all make many mistakes, for if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by the means of a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises our Lord Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. So blessing and cursing come from the same mouth. Surely, brothers and sisters, this is not right. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives or a grapevine produce figs? No, you can't draw fresh water from a salty spring. And so the main thing that I want to hit on when it comes to that is, obviously, like I said earlier, it can set things on fire. You know, it can set your whole life on fire. This entire topic of speaking over yourself, speaking over others, this can set your entire life on fire. It can set the relationships that you have, people around you, but also just your entire life itself. So obviously there's that fine line that we were talking about, but when it comes to that side of the line that we're talking about, right, this is the very thing that can ruin how you see yourself. And it can also ruin your future relationship with your wife or your husband. Something that you have to walk through with them if you don't catch it before then, right? And it's a trauma that you're going to have to go through with that person one day. And so I encourage you, if you do struggle with that, work on it and pray about it. Pray about it to God. Ask God to take those things away from you so that you can start to work on that before you get to that point in your life when you're with someone and live with someone and doing life with somebody, because that is the very thing that can take you out and leave you really stranded. Can hurt you big time. So, but that's just that verse itself, talking about, I want to read it again. It's the very end. It says, and so blessing and cursing cannot come out of the same mouth. I want to hit on the fact that as Christians, we're called to speak differently.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, you know, I read a study. There's about probably 70% of America that claims to know Christ or claims to be a Christian. 70%. Okay, I just want y'all to put that 70%. Do you actually think 70% of our country follows Christ or knows Christ?
I think they know.
I think they know the name.
They know the name, yeah.
Yes.
I think they know the name. They don't realize what having a relationship looks like.
Yes.
You know, and I mean, honestly, a lot of Christians don't truly understand what having a relationship with God looks like, you know?
Yeah.
I love, if you scroll up just like real quick, when it says the tongue is like a rudder that steers a ship. Think about how big a cruise ship is and think about how small the rudder is. It is small in comparison. Like the tongue is small in comparison to the body, and yet it literally is it steers us in our life, our tongue.
Yeah.
The one little thing. That just goes to show though how powerful what our words are. You know, the Bible makes no mistake in saying like there's life and death on the tongue.
Yes.
And I truly believe that. And in a generation like we have now where literally I listen to my nephew and his friends and they hate on each other, and that's what that's how they show love to each other. They
absolutely.
Which is like, we know this as guys, like it's always fun to like goof off, play around, and like you always trash talk your boys. But at the same time, sometimes it gets a little too real, and the reason they get in so many fights is because they're like,
there's a fine line.
You're trash, bro. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why don't you just say you're good at something instead of saying you're trash?
Yeah.
We've all been there, and we've all, it may not be meaning like out of the heart, oh, you're trash, but what it does, it comes off the tongue just like that. And the enemy will use that, you know?
Yes, I agree. And as guys, we're definitely all guilty, I think, sometimes.
100%, dude. I can't tell you how much trash I talk to my friends.
If you know me, okay, when it comes to sports or video games or
Let's talk about spike ball, Mike.
Oh my gosh. See, we could get on. Look, it's on my computer. It's spike ball. So when it comes to sports in general, I love to trash talk. I love to try to get in people's heads and make them second guess whether or not they're going to
It's
be
like
able
part
to
of
beat
sports,
me.
you know?
Yeah, it's part of sports, and I agree. But like you said, I think there's a fine line of finding where there's too much,
There
right?
is.
Yeah.
Like, because you can go across the line, right? With anything.
With
that you say.
anything,
Yeah, and like you said, it's a small rudder that leads your ship.
Yeah.
And you can say one thing and it could set everything on fire, and then now that person's mad at you. I remember one time.
Or you can hit an iceberg. You know?
I was, yeah. Wow.
Facts.
Facts. So actually, I was at Lead playing intramurals one time, and I remember look, if you're listening to this and you're in Lead, you probably know what I'm talking about. But there's certain people that get very, very, very competitive, and they get too competitive. Like me, I'm competitive, but I'm like joke around competitive. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna
learn when
try
to turn it on.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like, I'll get in your head. And so one time I remember I said something to somebody of like, because they had said something to somebody else on my team, and I said something back, but it was like in a joking way. And it was kind of like this way of like, oh yeah, you could do that, but we couldn't do it earlier. Okay, whatever, you know. And then it was like they turned on me and they looked at me and they were like, oh yeah, is that what you think? And they got like angry, and I was like, I don't think it was supposed to be that way.
It was a joke.
It was a joke. But just like what I said is it can set things on fire when you didn't even mean it to. And so you have to watch what you say, even in instances like that, even if you're joking or cutting up. Or if we could talk on sarcasm.
Cool. Boy.
You know.
Being in youth ministry has taught me, it's given me so much patience. Two, it truly, I think back to when I was 16, and I thought I was smart then. You think you're intelligent at 16. You think you know what you're talking about. And then you see 16-year-olds when you're 27, and you're like, wow, I was an idiot. Because they are saying the same things I was. And I try my best to communicate that in a loving way, especially with my nephew and his buddies. And when they are playing sports or doing anything competitive for that matter, Brawl Stars, Clash of Clans, doesn't matter. They want to win. They will just, I mean, they could be on the same team and they are trash talking like, bro, why didn't you get that kill? And they just start an argument for no reason. But it's true, man.
Oh yeah, like we play basketball at small group, dude. They will burn each other.
Yeah.
They miss an easy shot.
You miss a shot.
Dude, what are you doing? You're supposed to make that. Like
You're supposed to be Larry Bird, yeah.
They get so mad at each other, and it's crazy. But it's what starts their argument, starts their fights, and then they start playing bad.
Yep.
And,
all starts with the tongue, bro.
Yeah,
all starts with the tongue.
All starts with the tongue.
Yeah.
So,
Man,
But-
that's so good. You were talking about the situation at intramurals in Lee College, and oh man,
it's a huge one.
Something about that though. Something that reminded me of that is like, you were saying that we are called to talk differently, right? And that brought me back to that brought me back to 1 Peter. I don't know if you guys want to turn to that real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's so good, bro. It's so good.
I'm wondering if you're going to read the verse that I was going to read next.
I might.
Let's see.
Probably not actually. Hang on, let me see.
I feel like
Okay,
he is.
so
He is. Watch. Which I'm
Where am
down.
I?
I'm so down for. So go ahead.
where was I? Okay, here we go. First Peter chapter 1, and then I also want to look at chapter 2.
Okay.
First Peter chapter 1, verse 15. We'll start there and we'll move on to 16. But like the Holy One, verse 14. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the former lusts which were yours in your ignorance. But like the Holy One who called you, be holy yourselves, also in all your behavior, because it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. First of all, I just want to touch on the word holy real quick. Holy means set apart.
Yes.
It means special. It means exactly what you think it means. It means different.
Yep.
Different from what you see, different from what you hear, different from what you smell. Man, everything about you is different, right? And God called us to be different because he is different and because he called us into his family.
Yeah.
Chapter 2 touches on that even more, expounds onto that even more. Verse 9, but you are a chosen race, right? In the NASB 95 says, you are a chosen race. Other translations will tell you that you're a chosen people or you're a chosen group of people or whatever. No. You're a chosen race, a different person.
Yeah.
Because what does the Bible say? We're not even of this world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not even of this world. If we're not of this world, why are we doing
the same
things
things
of
they
the
are?
world?
And why do we speak like the
Why do we speak like the world? Why do we act like the world? Why do
Wow.
we dress like the world? No, we're called to be a different people.
Yes.
We're called to be holy because our Father is holy, set apart,
Yeah.
right? And I just wanted to touch on that real quick because, man, I love this conversation so much. I have this conversation with so many people, and it's always the same. It always goes the same way. They'll say a curse word, and let me rephrase that, because cursing and swearing are two different things, right? You can like the constitution of a curse is like, you know, negative talk, or you're putting yourself down or putting someone else down. They'll say a swear word, right? Like a F-bomb, the S word, something like that, right? And I'll be like,
Yeah.
well, why'd you say that? Aren't you Christian? Oh, I don't feel convicted by it. It's like, wait,
Ooh, that's a tough one.
like what? What do you mean you don't feel
There's
convicted?
a lot of people who say they don't feel convicted about a lot of things. But
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
That leads us right into our next talk is let's talk about cursing. Because I do want to talk about cursing and swearing and what that looks like. So what is the first thing that you guys think of when you hear someone curse? What's the first thing you think of?
What's this person's relationship with Jesus? Didn't they just say 10 minutes ago that they love Jesus?
But even just not even if they're a Christian, but just if you hear it.
Yeah.
Like you hear
I think it's a reaction. Like more so than anything else, we are taught to react as people instead of thinking and processing and learning. We're taught to react. Like that is what we're taught to do as a world, as a society. Like, hey, somebody treated you poorly, so you should treat them poorly back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, processing, and acting. Then we act in the moment, and somebody says something mean to us, or we're talking with our friends at school, and I feel like it happens so much with teenagers. Everybody else is cursing, so the easy thing to do is curse.
is curse with
The
everybody
easy
else.
thing to do is just say what everyone's saying, because if you don't, you will look different.
Yeah.
It's like we're talking about. You will look holy.
Yep.
Weird. Like out of the norm. I did it in high school, and I was the president of FCA, and I was still saying F-bombs. Like,
Yeah.
that is not, those two things don't equal up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's
I,
so good.
I think it's like we always talk about, we're called to speak differently. So what I want to hit on to you guys, if you're listening to listeners, young people, when it comes to following Jesus, the one thing that I encourage young people, the first thing that I challenge them on is their mouth. Because the one thing that I hear from them is swearing, cursing, even in just everyday talk. It's like a reaction, a normal reaction to just use that word.
That's awesome.
Right? And so the first thing that I attack is that, because if you're using those words, the words that you're using come from your heart. And if Jesus lives in your heart, you don't use those words.
Come on.
That's so
That's
Right?
good.
That's
And
so
so
good.
that's the number one thing that I hit on first is where is your heart at? Because if your heart's speaking these words, then you're not hiding the word in your heart.
Yeah, that's not
Let me
right.
just play devil's advocate real quick. You know, because you like Paul did this all the time in his letters. Right? He was like, would ask rhetorical questions of people who have asked him dumb questions before, right?
Literally.
Well, what about the Bible doesn't actually say anything about swearing. The Bible doesn't say I don't have to swear, and the Bible says, you know, what would you say to somebody who comes up to you and is like, well, Micah, you know, I don't feel convicted by swearing, and the Bible doesn't say don't swear; it just says don't curse, and then they'll give you like a full definition of what cursing is,
Yeah, and then they'll tell you what swearing is.
yeah. So, what would you say to somebody like that?
So I'm going to read exactly what you're talking about because I had this prepared because I knew the topic was even going to come up. It's because I knew
boy.
we were going to hit on that. I knew that we would even get to that point. So Ephesians 4:29 is what I want you to pull up. It says this. So the people that tell me that there's nothing about cursing in the Bible or swearing, don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them.
That's
Is right there in front of you, right? It also talks about do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, is what the word says as well. 1 Peter 3:10, as I thought you were gonna hit on 1 Peter 3.
He was close,
but
I thought he
you
was
were
gonna
close.
hit it,
You were
yeah.
very close, which is crazy. But we're gonna read that too, and it says this. 1 Peter 3:10 says, For the scriptures say, if you want to enjoy life and see many happy days, keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies.
Yeah.
And the whole point of why I wanted to talk about cursing is because so many young people nowadays struggle with this. So many young people struggle with controlling their tongue. Now, the Bible says that we're not able to completely control our tongue, right? Because if we could, we would be perfect, is what it says. We're not perfect. But there is this thing called self-control, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You have a choice to say what you want to say. You have a choice whether or not you want to use the F-bomb or you can use something else. You have the choice to use the S word or this word. Or you have that choice. Because people ask me all the time, like, Micah, how do you not use profanity? How do you not curse? How do you... Well, it's because, for one, it's a fight. It's a battle. It's spiritual warfare. It's you have to go to war. And you have to speak life, not only over yourselves, but over the situation of, I use these words, and Father, I don't want to use these words.
Yeah.
And then also telling your friends, if you're a young person right now, okay, and you're listening to this, if you're using those words and you want to stop using those words, tell your friends, hey, every time I use a curse word, just give me a punch in my arm. I'm not kidding you, because guess how many times you will get punched in your arm a day?
A lot.
And you'll get sick of it. I'm serious. If you're really serious about going forth of getting rid of sin in your life, you'll go to every precaution possible. Same thing with watching pornography. You'll have every accountability in the world to stop watching pornography or looking at things you're not supposed to be looking at. You'll go to every measure. You'll block Safari. You'll block this. You'll block that. You'll go to your spiritual authority when you think of those things. Or you'll keep yourself accountable if you really want to change it. So if you want to change the way that you speak, it's called self-control.
Yeah.
And so it's practicing self-control. It's not just looking at it and going, oh, I want to stop cursing, but I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not going to stop by just thinking that you're going to stop. You have to put an effort to do
Got
that.
to.
So
Yeah.
that's the main point of what I wanted to hit on with you guys is, as Christians, we're not just called to, talk about the Lord and live for him, but we're called to speak differently. So people, because first thing I think of when I hear a Christian use profanity is, I don't know how close he is with the Lord,
Yeah.
right? I don't judge,
Yeah.
right? But
But
go,
it definitely affects
makes
their
me
witness
question.
for you.
Well, sometimes
It affects their
Witness.
witness.
Yeah, sometimes
Witness
I
is
think I'm
ruined.
like, what are they going through?
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
100%. Because look, I've let it slip out of my mouth before, especially even in my later years. What I've learned though is I have stopped reacting and I've started at I rest.
Responding.
I just
Yes.
respond. So I sit there. I don't act on the situation, but instead I process and I think, okay. Sometimes it's better to not say anything at all because you're so angry. Look, we're all humans here. I'll say
Yeah.
it. Sometimes when my nephew speaks to me, and it happened earlier at the gym, literally right before I came here, he called me stupid. And the first thing I wanted to do was just be like, react.
Yeah.
But literally I was like, I'm about to go on a podcast. No, but I thought, man, it does not do me any good to react the same way he is.
Yeah.
So I said, let me take a second to breathe, think, and I'll respond later.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. And I think it's a walk. It's spiritual maturity.
100%,
comes
dude.
with it,
I
you
was
know?
not doing that at 18. I wasn't doing it at 20. I
Yeah.
probably wasn't even doing it at 22, to be honest with you, but I'm doing it now. And it took time.
It's spiritual maturity. It's definitely something that you have to change over time. Sometimes it's not overnight. Now, I will say that I've heard of people that cursing was taken out of their mouth the day they got saved. Hey,
Yeah.
God bless, praise God, but it's not the same for everybody. Some people have to fight this thing and get through it, and sometimes it's a battle. And so, I walk with the students that I'm with that struggle with this and help them and listen to them and listen to what they're going through. Like you said, when you hear someone use profanity, they're probably going through something.
Yeah.
They're probably dealing with something.
Because they're hurt. And
Yes.
they only know how to process that hurt by using it, by either
Exactly.
giving it towards others or they give it towards themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mind if we talk a little bit about what it even means to respond and react?
Yeah, go
Since
ahead.
we're talking about being different, the world, and we're talking about reaction and response, right? Reaction and response kind of sound the same, right? You think about it, you're like, wait a second. When I respond, I'm still kind of reacting.
You are
am I
still
not?
reacting.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
But the difference between the two is think of it like you're at a doctor's office, right? And he's checking for your reflexes, right? A reaction is a reflex. When somebody hurts you, you put a wall up. Or whenever you get hit on the knee, your there's a certain spot on the knee. Whenever you get hit in that certain spot on your knee, your leg kicks, right?
Yep.
That's exactly what happens when you get hurt.
Yep.
You start saying things you don't really mean, or you start putting walls up and guarding yourself, right?
Yes.
A response is you take a step back, you look at the situation critically, and you think critically about it. And then you think before you do, and then you take action because you're at a much more clear-minded spot before what you would have done was like, I hate this person. Let me just kick him in the face.
It's like when someone cuts you off in traffic and you react.
Oh my gosh, bro.
You,
oh my gosh,
you
bro.
want to
That's a
like
good
cuss
one.
and flip him the bird, but it's like, no, let me just calm down. But
That's
I
so
think of
good.
it almost as like chess. In chess, you don't react, you just respond because
Yes.
you sit there and you think
Yeah.
and you respond. You don't react, like you said. When something happens to you immediately, sometimes it's just second nature to
That's
react.
so good. That's
and
so good.
not sit there.
It's like they jump your pawn, and you're like, he just took my pawn. I'm going to jump his pawn. And then you jump his pawn.
You
and
reacted.
He's already beaten you mentally.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yep. It's so true.
That's
But
so good.
Yes, that's good, and I agree. Reaction is not always the answer, right? And sometimes we can react as humans, and we can just kind of off the dome just be like, oh, this, and sometimes we're not supposed to do that, and sometimes it's okay, and obviously we don't respond bad every time, but I think as Christians we are called to speak differently in a way of responding instead of reacting.
Yeah.
But real quick, I want to talk about this last thing. This is definitely one of the main things besides what we just talked about. I want to talk more about gossip.
Ooh.
I
literally
and
have a verse
have
pulled
you
up.
guys, have you guys ever been around gossip or a part of it?
I'm a victim.
Yes.
I am a victim.
I am a victim as
I'm a
well.
victim. Even, I mean, honestly speaking, I won't dive too deep into, what's going on, but right now as we are speaking, I'm like walking through something with my pastor, going through a healing process of like the devil attacked me with gossip, and now I'm healing from it. Right? I'm walking in a place of healing, but it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks bad. Actually, I've never had anxiety before until this.
Dude, it will cause anxiety.
I walk around people, I'm like, bro, do people like because people think this about me, do they look at me differently?
100%,
Like
dude.
I'm hearing what people are saying. Like I'm hearing the stories people are, and I've had of course the blessing and the honor to be able to sit down with some people who have like actually like taken the time to sit down and ask me about it.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, is this what really happened? No, this is not what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had the honor of being able to sit down with certain people and be able to talk about it. But for those who don't come to me and talk about it, I wonder, are we really friends?
Yeah.
Do they really care about how I feel?
The enemy will use that because they'll be like, hey, what are they saying about me? When in reality, 9 times out of 10, they're usually not saying anything about you. It's the thought of what are they saying that hurts you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so I definitely wanted to talk about it because for me, I think, like you said, it's the thought. You think people are talking about you more than they actually are.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you think in your head, you're like, oh, well, they're probably saying this behind my back or this, or, you're thinking that in your head. And they might, God hears conversations that you don't, and probably ones that you don't need to hear.
Exactly.
So, obviously, you let people judge the fruit that you bear, and that's okay, but a lot of times we hold those things against people by the fruit that they bared at that time doesn't mean that they bear them for life, right? There's always change, especially when it comes to us as Christians. We're always changing. We're always evolving. We're always growing, and so we always make mistakes. So, like I said earlier, Ephesians 4:29 says this: do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up to their needs, that it may benefit those who listens. I wanted to pull that up because that is the other version of the verse that I read. And so Exodus 23:1 says this. I want you guys to listen to this. I read it earlier, and out loud, I was by myself. I read it, and I went, oh! Because I was like, dang, that's good. Exodus 23:1 says, do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. I was like, ooh, I was like, dang. I was like, that is right on. Because a lot of times we as people, we definitely are the person that is the malicious witness of what we saw but don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
And then we don't go to the person that it happened to and ask them about it.
Yeah. You go through the situation and you just hear what happened. And so you assume, oh, that must be true if people are talking about it.
Yeah.
When it is not.
Yeah.
You know,
Indeed, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's always three sides to every story. There's one
Always.
side, the other side, and then there's the truth.
the
Yeah.
truth. Yeah. We,
that's so
So-
crazy.
we just recently, and this will be quick, but we just recently walked through something, you know, at the church. And I was not even a part of it, but I was a victim to it because, of course, when things happen on a staff of the church, everyone talks, the congregation talks, other people talks, other churches talk. It goes down the line. So 9 times out of 10, you will hear these things. Some could be true, some could be off, some could be in the middle. But one of them was like, hey, Sam's going to resign from the church. Those words never left my mouth. And this is like 2 days after the situation happened. And I'm sitting here thinking like, this is the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, I said, I'm just going to pour into these kids more. But other people are saying, oh, Sam's going to resign from the church. And this is something that the pastors asked me that I said. I was like, no, I didn't say that. And not only that, but then it was like other rumors were like, well, Sam is not fit to be youth pastor, was said by people. And so I'm sitting here being quote unquote victim of it. But in reality, I just said, okay, whoever is saying these things, they don't know my heart. And to me, that's all that matters. Like God knows the surrounding of the situation.
Absolutely.
And I think it's so important because when people gossip about you, you can do one of two things. You can listen to it and you can react, or you can listen to it and you can respond.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
you
so
were gonna
good.
say something? I didn't know if you had something.
No, honestly, no. But that's like pretty close to home as like what's happening to me. Like nobody's saying like I'm leaving Lee College or anything like that, but it's like you can listen to it or react, or you can listen to it and respond. And listening to it and responding is like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to my spiritual leaders.
Yep.
We're gonna figure out how to walk through healing. I'm gonna take a step back from some of the things that I'm doing.
Yep.
I'm gonna like focus on what God wants me to see through this, right?
Yeah.
And then this takes me to somewhere where it's like, God, I know that this is happening right now, and I'm not gonna ask you why, but what I am gonna ask you is, what do you want me to see and know through this?
Exactly. Because even if some things aren't true, like even if the things aren't true that's being said about you, sometimes it's things that we need to hear because it's going to keep us out of that realm of like
Yeah.
it happening. You know, sometimes it
Yeah,
keeps
that's a
us
good
in
point.
check. Like you
Yeah.
have to step back from situations sometimes. Because even when I hear a negative thought about me, whether it's a coach, an athlete, a pastor, whatever, a friend, I step back and I ask myself, is that true?
Yeah.
And if I even have like a glimpse of, I'm like, maybe I am struggling with this. I'm like, let's work on it. And
Yeah.
I seek, help, and I seek advice, and I seek, hey, how do I walk through this?
Yeah.
I think what's so crazy is that like this just shows you like whenever they're talking about God, whenever they're talking about like how James is talking about the tongue is evil, it's constantly spitting out evil, it's poisonous, right? Like this just shows you like the poison and the power of the poison. Like
So-
it's terrible. It's
Power
awful.
of the tongue.
It's
is
potent.
So
Yeah.
powerful.
It's bad.
It's bad.
It's more than you think. And I'm gonna read another verse. James 1:26 says, "Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless."
Dude, that's tough. That is tough.
So just think about that in a sense of the people who consider themselves Christians are the very people sometimes who don't have the tight rein on their tongue.
Yeah.
They're talking gossip. They're talking bad things. They're talking the way they're not. And that goes in even into cursing and swearing as well.
Yeah.
You know.
That's so crazy because
So-
it's like, it's so funny because it's like, scratch all like the mission work
Yeah.
and the outreaches and stuff like that. Like, you don't even got to be out there doing anything.
No.
If you're sitting in your room or you're sitting with a group of people and you're saying things that you shouldn't be saying,
Yeah.
you're
know.
already not your
Yeah.
witness is already
You're
dead.
already hurting yourself and
Yes.
your witness and the people around you.
And,
Yes.
let's just even talk about that for a second because that's huge in itself because witness is everything. That is the
Everything.
other thing that I talk to because the reason why I hit on it to young people more than anything is I said, if you want to live for Christ, if you want to walk with Jesus, your witness is everything. I tell young people, me as in ministry, I live to a higher standard than most people. I'm not going to go to a bar and be in a bar, not because I know I'm not supposed to be there, but because I don't want someone to snap a photo of someone else.
Why was
I'm in
Micah at this bar?
I'm in the picture
going on?
behind, and they see me with a white cup in my hand. I got water in it. They have no idea. But guess what? They're going to think in their head, Micah's there
If
drinking.
Micah's at the bar with a white cup, I can be at the bar
I
with a
can
white
be
cup.
at the bar with a white cup. And guess what? That might not even be the capacity of what they might think, but it's in my head that I keep myself at that standard.
Yeah.
As a minister. And some people don't have that standard as a Christian. But what I'm trying to tell you is witness is everything. Witness means everything. If you are using profane words or speaking gossip about people and it's always causing drama and doing these types of things, your witness is ruined every time.
Yeah.
Every single time. And that means everything when it comes to being a Christian.
That's so good.
So, it literally says it in James 4:11 and Leviticus 19:16. It says this: brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. When you judge the law, you're not keeping it, but sitting in judgment on it.
Dude.
And then it says, Leviticus 19:16 says this: do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life, or I am the Lord. So, point being, do not slander people. Do not put them down. If we're speaking on that, sowing discord is a huge thing in churches.
So big.
It's so big to the point to where it's so gross because a little yeast ruins the whole batch.
Yeah.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly because I think that when it comes to sowing discord, there'll be one thing that's said about one person around a group of people, and now the rest of everybody else doesn't go to that person and ask if that's actually true.
That does happen.
Like
that absolutely will happen.
It's huge. It's a huge thing that's an issue in churches, not even just in churches, in life and in the world. But
Boy, that's a whole subject on its own.
yeah, exactly. And so I'll just read. Proverbs 6:16 through 19 says this: there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shred innocent blood. A heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. So, with that being said,
Stop causing drama.
yes, that is the one thing that people struggle with more than anything. They love drama, and they love to talk about these, but this is the very thing that the Lord detests.
Yeah.
It's not that he doesn't like it. No, he hates it.
He hates
Yeah.
it.
He hates this. It's like sexual immorality, lies, stealing. He hates these things. But this in itself, he hates people who breathe lies. What does the word say? Keep your lips from telling lies, right? So what do we need to stay away from? How do we need to speak as Christians differently? Like we said,
Yeah.
holy, to be set apart, right? And so as Christians, this is the way that we're called to speak.
Realistically, what you could even do is like hang around your friends who don't love Jesus, and whatever they're doing, do the opposite, bro.
Yeah.
Whatever people that aren't in church with you
Yes.
are going
Facts,
to.
If you got friends who aren't going to church, they're not going to small group, they're out hanging out at bars, they're cursing, they're swearing, right? Whatever they're doing, just
around,
do
all
the
the
exact
things.
opposite.
Yeah.
Go to church, go to small group.
That's a tough one, man, too, because it's like you love these people and you're meant to minister to these people. And I do the same thing, but there's so many people who have cut me off personally because it's like they think I'm judging them. When in reality, just because I invited you to church every night after you went to the bar does not mean I'm judging you. It means I care about you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
know?
that's so
Yes.
good.
But I got
so
a
good.
quick verse right here because it's
Yeah, go
talking
ahead.
about gossip. It's Proverbs 18:8. And the words of gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the inmost parts. That right there tells us how sweet gossip is to people. Like it says they are like morsels. We want to, like as creatures, when we hear something about somebody else, it releases an endorphin like, oh, somebody else is doing something bad too, so I'm not in the wrong.
Yeah.
Literally. So it's like when we hear gossip, our first reaction, because sin is our nature, we think, okay, yeah, maybe I do want to talk about that person. Or maybe
Yeah.
I want to talk bad about someone to make me feel better. That is what we do.
Yes.
So
that's huge.
if I can encourage young people with anything, that's the enemy's plan for you.
Yeah.
That is the enemy's plan for you. God's plan is Proverbs 18:21. And he tells you the tongue has the power of life and death.
Yes.
And those who love it will eat its fruit.
Ooh.
Those who love it will eat its fruit. God's telling you right there, you use the power for life, you will eat its fruit. You use your
Yes.
power for death.
Amen.
You will eat its fruit.
Yeah,
And what's its
you will
fruit?
eat its fruit.
What does Romans 6? What is it? Romans 6:23 say? For the wages of sin is death.
Yes.
The wages, man.
It's not going to be good fruit.
Yeah, bad fruit.
That
It's
fruit tastes
rotten.
Bad fruit.
Bad.
Man, I love what you said about like a little yeast ruins the whole batch. I haven't heard that saying before, but I have heard like
Bad apple.
one bad apple ruins the whole batch.
Yes.
Right? Like I don't know what I was doing when I was like learning this, but like I think I was like scrolling through YouTube and I found out like apparently for like soft food, if you see even just a little bit of mold, you got to throw the whole thing away.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because
It's true.
mold permeates through soft food faster
Yeah.
at a larger scale.
I've thrown out a lot of bread because of mold.
But like with hard food, it's like, okay, well, there's a little bit of mold. I can cut that off and there's no more mold. But like we're soft creatures.
Yeah.
A little bit of mold's going to ruin our lives.
Dude, that's so true, man. You let one little thing in your life and it will spread to everything else in your life.
Yep.
And despite what people want to talk about, darkness will always be brought into light. If you have something that's hiding, and I'm speaking from a testimony, like one thing in your life that you think you can block out, whether it's a sin you're dealing with, a person you're dealing with, you name it, it will come to light.
Yep.
It will affect your relationships. It will affect the way you preach. It will affect your witness. It will affect the words that come out your mouth. Anything that one thing that you might think, this isn't bothering the rest of my life. This isn't bothering my relationships. I'm doing it by myself in my room. Nobody else can see.
Yep.
God sees.
Yep.
And you can eat that fruit.
Yep. And it's going to be brought to light, and I learned that the hard way. Me personally, even in my life, I've learned that the hard way so many times of hiding things and not being accountable with my actions. And so if you are listening to this as a young person, or even just a person in general, if you're listening to this, if you're going through hiding something that you think that you need to hide, trust me, it's going to come to light eventually.
Tell somebody you trust.
Tell somebody you trust, be accountable, open up, be vulnerable, and the Lord's going to honor that, and he's going to restore you through it, and there's going to be redemption for you, just like there is for anybody
Facts.
else. And so, because I guarantee you, the very thing that you might be hiding or might be going through is probably what someone else is doing.
Somebody else is going through it. No
Somebody
doubt.
else has dealt
Somebody
with it.
else is going through it.
Yeah.
And especially as Christians, we all struggle with a lot of different things, and we all struggle with some of the same things, So, but
Really quickly before we take off here,
Yeah.
I just want to end with two things real quick.
Yeah, go
Number
ahead.
one
Let's hear
is
it.
that we're talking all about like how you should be living your life differently, or you shouldn't be living like the world, right? But I just want everyone to know there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus, right?
Absolutely.
The word says that there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus
Facts.
for those who love him, right? Number two is Ephesians 4, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 30, right? Right after you said, don't use foul or abusive language, right?
yes,
Paul is telling the Ephesians, don't live like this.
Yeah.
And in verse 30 he says, and do not bring sorrow to God's Holy Spirit by the way that you live, right?
Yes.
Live differently.
You
Yes.
gotta live different.
And then he says, right after that, he says, remember, he has identified you as his own,
Yes.
guaranteeing that you will be saved on the day of redemption, right? So if you love Jesus, live differently, right? You're going to slip up here and there.
Yeah,
and there's no
absolutely.
condemnation in that. But remember that you've been identified as God's own,
yes,
guaranteeing that you're going to be saved.
Yeah.
So live differently,
yeah.
right?
That's awesome. That's a good point. And just to kind of close up, like you said, that's a good closing point, because obviously we called this episode "Watch Your Mouth," right? Is because we want you guys to realize the capacity that this is at.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't talk about this thing. Is when I hear just in everyday life, I walking around or even playing a video game. Let me tell you, it is like.
Oh,
cursing, talking bad about each other,
talk.
doom.
Man.
It's like constant. And I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of it. Obviously, like you said, we all slip up, but it's also a choice
It is.
to choose whether or not you are going to speak differently as a Christian. And so we challenge you on the other side of this, listening to this, watching this, if you are, go to God with it. Get an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Find ways and avenues of find your heart. Where's your heart at in this? And how are you going to live differently when it comes to speaking differently, right? So, but before we go, I just want to say to everyone that's listening, everyone that's watching, we appreciate you so much. We're so thankful for all the downloads, all the likes, all the comments, all the things that you guys say about the table. We're super excited to be able to continue this podcast and do what we want to do. We have a surprise for the next episode. It's going to be an awesome episode for the next one. But if you haven't, please go on our YouTube. It's at The Table Podcast. is the name of it. Go on there, subscribe, like our videos. We really appreciate it. And as well, we are on every streaming platform as well, and we are growing and growing, and we love it. We want to have a platform to be able to encourage young people to follow Jesus, because this is what this is about, is to come and taste and see that the Lord is good. You're coming to the table, and we want you to have an opportunity to hear about the Lord. So we're super thankful, and we're just so excited to be able to continue to do this. So just like and subscribe. We appreciate it, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.